So where do I go from? You say? Kokomlemle. Uh-huh.
If you get there, just Britannia Hotel.
I should ask for Britannia Hotel.
Yes.
And
Just very close around that area.
do you know the name of the street you live on? Can you direct people to your home or office without, naming several landmarks, including the nearest plantain seller, and taking them through a convoluted process? In Ghana today, there's a major exercise underway to name all our streets and number our houses. I've been tracking this exercise and speaking to people involved with it.
Well, the street naming and property addressing system is basically helping the assemblies, that is metropolitan, municipal, and then the district assemblies, to name all the streets that they have and also number the properties, so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to gather what we call spatial data.
It's part of the functionality of a town that you must have some way of identifying a property.
We live in a city where we need to locate each other, and location is very key in environmental administration of a particular city.
It also helps the assemblies to have the data for urban planning issues, and more importantly, the utility services. It also helps them to actually locate the various areas that they are supposed to get their revenues from. And more importantly, we are going to number all the properties, so it will help the assemblies to know the total number of properties that they have and also the total revenue that will be accrued from it.
For example, hotel revenue generation, you need to know where people are staying to be able to build them. For example, electricity corporation, water, they need to identify the location of people and they can build them appropriately for tax purposes. And you also realize that because of the large informal sector in the urban sectors, we need to identify people to be able to appropriately tax them.
There are 4 or 5 different address systems that I can use for my house in New Achimota.
That's the other problem.
And you may have one property having about 3 different names or different numbers. You see National Health Insurance having a different number. You see maybe electricity company having a different number, and maybe the AMA also having a different number. So at the end of it all, we want to have a unified, standardized address system whereby all the utility companies, AMA, and all the private sector will use the same number to actually locate one property.
One other thing is emergency services.
I would want to see you having a discussion, an interview with the police service, for example. How competent are they with the street naming? Are they using it? The last time somebody called the police service on an emergency, what did the person say?
Yeah.
Did they interact with street numbers?
Yeah, that's the way to test it, right? So we know what that's.
So you go to fire service, ask them, the last time you had a call, was it used?
You want me to go and ask them that?
Yes, go ahead, why not?
So we went to the Ghana National Fire Service to find out what their experience was.
Most of the times, the callers will call us. Because their properties are burning, they are hysterical. So they will just call, and then they will say, my house is burning at Osu, without any street name, nothing. When you mention Osu, Osu is wide. So we advise them, we tell them to mention a landmark, a popular place, a nearby spot, perhaps a church, something we will be able to identify, so that when we move our fire tender, we know we are going to search a place, because there are no street names that you mention, so and so streets, for us to go to that particular street.
Or house number even?
No house number, nothing. So we just have to use those landmarks.
In 2013, the president gave all metropolitan, municipal, and district assemblies 18 months to name all the streets and number all the houses within their jurisdiction. Needless to say, the deadline has come and gone, and the project is still not complete. We've been checking on the status of the exercise in Accra.
It is more of planning. I am aware that there has been a lot of planning at the Ministry of Local Government, where they've tried to set out the standards, the framework for that activity. So it took some time to have the paperwork done, and it was done. When it was completed, then it was the need to now implement it. And implementation requires resources.
Database, you can see we have street names.
Deciding which street names to choose, for example, was no small task and involved extensive engagement.
There were a series of stakeholder consultations with chiefs, opinion leaders, academia within the AMA area to identify streets, the names, the appropriate names that have to be given to the streets. So that was done.
Kojo Yeboah says it's a fully scientific exercise designed to stay.
So we are using maps. We are not just, assigning names and then, giving numbers to the properties. We are using the maps So you have a map that is telling you that this is the name of this, and this is the property, and this is the number of the property.
And in the past, we had these naming and numbering done, but they were not electronic. And since they were on hard copies and so on, it became very difficult for updating and so on. This time around, what is happening is that government is looking at districts introducing electronic formats by using GIS.
What is GIS?
Geographic Information Systems, to implement street naming. And with that, you can set up spatial databases for almost everything. The number of districts have secured satellite images and autophotos. Autophotos, they obtain it from the Survey and Mapping Division of the Lands Commission. Satellite images are purchased from vendors if the Survey and Mapping Division doesn't have it. And they were trained in 2013, 2014, and the Ministry of Local Governments have also bought equipment for the districts, which was to enable them to set up GIS labs or MIS labs within the town planning units, so that they could then use that as a basis to do the digital work that was required.
Is that what's happening now?
Most of the districts are doing that.
They completed the desk work of naming all the streets and also the numbering of the house numbers. So what is going to happen is happening now is that we've just signed contracts with some contractors to actually implement, start putting up the signages. I think if you move around Accra, you see some signages. We did what we call a pilot program to test whether they'll be visible, they'll be durable, and things like that. So that has been tested. Now we are going the full haul.
And we have now actually started the mounting of the signage, showing the direction of the roads and the names. Yeah, so the consultation has taken us a lot of time, and it is very, very important. So we are entering like a mouse, and then eventually we will live like a lion. So very soon you will see that all the streets in Accra Metropolitan Assembly's jurisdiction will be assigned with names and property. We have identified over 4,200 streets which we have assigned names to.
We took a drive around the city to see things for ourselves. As you can see, there is really not a street sign here. Nothing tells you what the street is on the right. Okay? So you see quite a bit of that. I mean, I know they're doing quite a bit of work with naming streets, but there's so many, like as we're gathering up here again, as you can see, this is another one. What street is this to our right? There are no sort of standard sizes or colors. I mean, I've seen quite a few of them are done in blue and black, but we need to standardize them. So when you see a street sign, you know it's a street sign, it's a street name, rather than having them done in different colors and that sort of thing. I don't know what road we are getting onto now, but I'm sure if people were coming here, they would ask the driver to bring them near Independence Square. As usual, they look for the closest possible place that most people know. So to our right, you see, you are approaching John Evans Atta Mills High Street. Okay? So, but I don't know how many people who are coming here would ask the taxi driver to bring them to John Evans Atta Mills High Street. It used to be called High Street. I think it was a lot easier to remember it as that. But generally speaking, as a rule, we don't seem to mention the street names when we are looking for places. This has to change.
We shouldn't assume that because we are Ghanaians and we live in a community and we have our way of going things around, we are very comfortable with our taxi drivers and how they operate. That's fine, that's small. But what about the international person who's coming to Ghana for the first time? He's going to take a taxi and go around. His main contact with the system is first and foremost with the taxi driver. His impression, he probably asks a few questions, but he gets, because the taxi driver is a window.
Indeed.
So
to the city.
Whether we have, I don't know whether there can be a segregated system where at least...
To train them or something?
No, at least those that are meant for tourism purposes are identified because they can read and they can write. They can maybe sieve them out so that at least they become a good link.
We spoke to some taxi drivers who could not agree more.
Roads name, any street names, they are not Enya duma papa wa ha. Ko betuma fa obi. Baby okọ no. Unim ho pa nso different name obebo no mo so beka so mpacha omenim ho na wa fa obi fofora no obi betumi de na roam around I wasting the time kwa onim ho.
We always identify the roads by maybe the building or the shops that are close to the police or any office that's close to the police. But by the street names, we don't know.
Foreigners no ba. Omo to me bo street be the Asia taxi driver. Onim bon so omo ankasa kuta map on booklet. To omo bie mu na wa ohwepe unya hu street no na place no pe no wa.
Given the current culture of using landmarks and asking for directions as we go along, are Ghanaians really going to bother with street names and home addresses?
It's a big question, man. But we need to do just more than what has been done. And I'm assuming this is just the first phase and that there's a process to be rolled out. Because if you don't do that and you assume that you've put those symbols, because we've had street names in the core part of Accra. Like I keep here in Asylum Down, there have been street names for years. Accra Central, Debbie Avenue, Bannerman Road.
Do people use them?
No.
That should not preclude us from having the signages visibly available. If they are available, gradually people will know.
No, we have to invest in getting a certain public education around it, break it down to all levels.
It will be very gradual process. As and when they see the signages, they see the house numbers, it will catch up.
The presence of kiosks and containers all over the city could also be a challenge to the house numbering exercise. We asked William Amwa, an urban planner who is involved with the project, to tell us about some of the challenges they've been facing.
We've had situations where the development in space is not the same as what the local governments have on record. And even if you take the satellite images and auto photos that you're using, you still have a lot of unauthorized developments that cannot be used in terms of addressing. So when you're doing addressing, in Ghana at the moment, we have what we call ground truthing, going to the ground to check the truth of what is on the ground. Is it really a building or is it a container? So if it's a container, we are not numbering that.
Why don't they tear down illegal structures?
Wow, that's the question today. It's more political than anything else.
You can't do that, can you? You'll upset people.
First of all, let's deal with the formal areas. Well-developed airport, Ridge, East Legon, and things like that. That can be done appropriately. And areas like Nima, where we have difficulties, or the Zongos, where we have difficulties in accessibility, then we can complement it with other means.
And where we found street names, billboard advertising often obscured them. There, as we come up to the left where the taxi is coming from, you see, you actually have a sign for somebody's private shop or something. There you are, to your left. It says to the Oxford Street Mall. But there you are, you see, right across there. Look at all those different banks. Look at all those billboards, if you like. There is so many of them in the city that they overshadow street names and that sort of thing. It's just so many, all over.
It's an issue, it's a challenge. It's one of the challenges we have noticed. Now, what we have decided is that we mark out places where we feel some of these things will obstruct the signage. Then we bring them down, because the guideline is very specific on it. We shouldn't allow some of these things to block them. Now, you notice from this point, you don't get access to see the signage down there. So in this case, we take note, and then we take these obstructions off, according to our bylaws.
All in all, the street naming and house numbering exercise is on track. It seems to me that what remains to be done is a public education campaign in support of behavioral change.
It doesn't just happen overnight because we're not used to it. So something new that has come to the system, we have to invest in getting a certain public education around it, break it down to all levels.
You're not confident that this business is going to work?
It should work if we do the right thing.
Yeah,
it should work.
That's a big if.
Yeah.